Now that the Clockwork discussion has sort of died down and it has sort of de-emotionalized, it has been quite some time since the game against Los Angeles Gladiators where all this bubbled up, I thought it was the fairest point to assess Clockwork's performance, especially now in that dive situation, and to also take into consideration what the starting point from this all was, right? So the general outline of this video is I will show you how this discussion started, and then I will show you a couple of clips from that respective game, and I will also tell you that this respective game is sort of, I would say, representative of who Clockwork is as a player and what you can expect of him. And then sort of I will give my conclusions and possible questions. And let's see if that conclusion sort of makes sense to you in the way I presented the argument here. So we will start out by showing the Twitter response of Flame, and we will not focus too much on Jake here, but Clockwork DMX Bishu on both opening fights on Volskaya to give us a clear win condition on first point. But guys, we need a Preceptor. I can tell you, the demacking of Bishu does happen on both attacks. They fail the first attack. He on his last breath in that fight, he gets out, I think, demacks Bishu, and therefore makes it a lot easier to win the second fight for the Outlaws, right? Definitely true. Now, if I would lead this as a holistic argument why Clockwork is a irreplaceable or not in need of replacement component, I don't think that's fair. But then again, this is a tweet, right? Like, it's not like Flame put out an analysis video defending his player, and we don't know what other reasons he has for saying these things, right? So, in general, we have to be fair here. The scope of that argument has to be limited. But the general notion that he did demac them and gave them a chance, definitely true. That's definitely the case. We will see this in a second. So I weighed in a little bit saying that yes, there are differences also in terms of 2CP, how he's played. He does only play 2CP for them, and how he's still pretty low in damage, and how there's different Tracer playstyles, and how even someone like a Sabiolbi is pretty low in terms of time to charge ultimate, which in the vast majority of cases we can expect to mean damage, because the only thing that is not tracked here is how much damage people do while they already have ultimate. And it would have to be a very interesting set of circumstances that would make it so that a specific player has more damage when he has ult for some specific reason, right? So, but we see here, Clockwork is above Sabiolbi in time to charge ult. So if damage means good, then Clockwork would have to be better than... No, you obviously realize that damage is not everything, right? And it depends on the playstyle. And someone like a Sabiolbi would take more duels, will more go for these Tracer situations, while someone like Clockwork is on tank burst duty for a lot of it, and not just tank burst duty, but also to sort of, sometimes he's there to scoot the other Tracer out from his backline, sometimes he does disruption of the enemy backline, but not by necessarily killing them as much, but as sort of distracting them, right? And that's obviously intangibles we can't really get from stats, right? To be fair. Now, that doesn't mean that these other Tracers aren't accomplishing the same goals by different means, for instance, by killing people, right? So just to be fair in the argument, so Clockwork is a very dragged out playstyle Tracer, where the thing he doesn't do is take duels, and the thing he doesn't do is coordinate well with his tank line whatsoever. And we will see how that becomes a problem. Now, Houston as a team, just strategically and tactically, is not built around a Tracer player. He's not in tune with the tank line most of the time. And we will see in a second how that looks like in a game environment. And they also have defaults that make it so that a Tracer player will inherently never shine as hard as the star level player Tracers will on other teams. Now, this is a completely fair strategy. You build your team around your star players, right? So if your star player is a Tracer, you probably incorporate strategies that entails this. London builds much of their strategy around the Prophet gesture synergy, and those guys will go off on some way, and then the backline and the other tank and the DPS will be together and sort of distract, and then they come out and pounce or something. They have very many variations, but it's one of the archetypical attacks they would do, right? With Clockwork, none of that synergy is happening. And I'm not sure if that can really be attributed to his playstyle, or to him as a person or as a player, rather, but rather to what Traces do in Houston Outlaws. And in Houston Outlaws, Linksa is the star player and the frontline are the star players. The rest has to sort of work around that and look good. And certainly the support players also had their shiny games, but they are not a focal point of their strategy. Now, Sideshow also chimed in, basically saying that he looked at the numbers and he wasn't looking like both Tracers weren't looking good at all. The stats are bad, and they were looking at the entirety of stage 2 and whatever, and we see here 43% of all kills are on tanks, has high pulse bomb hit rate compared to kills, indicating tank sticks. That is true. For the most part, we see in Clockwork a playstyle is very reminiscent of Immortal's Grim Reality when he used to play Tracer, where he only Diva busts or Winston busts, right? And the bombs will all go on these targets. And only ever if there's a situation where, for instance, we will see in the end of 2CP, where their tank is already dead and they're sort of brawling it out in order to cap the point, then he will try to go for a stick. And oddly enough, he will succeed quite often, right? So this is basically the point. Their Tracer leg star ability means the stall can be exploited hard by putting them in awkward positions. It's all true, right? But that's a deliberate decision. And let's keep in mind, what happens if a start level Tracer enters Outlaws? Are they going to completely like mess with their entire strategy? Now, to be fair to that argument is also that this team has played a long time together. So the question is, can Clockwork change the playstyle? Is increasingly questionable, right? But maybe it can be done. Because I can tell you, this guy has, at the very least, the mechanics to be a serviceable Tracer in Overwatch League. His mechanics are not that much worse than someone like a Prophet. Now, what he was very different in is in the synergy with his team. And in, you would say, game sense. That's where he's lacking. And it's also that his team doesn't help him in that department much at all. Right? So let's actually look at this game, right? So this attack starts out, this defense, attack starts out, and something like unspeakable happens. Let's first look at what the tank line does, and go in that order. Wait, where's my pen tool? Epic pen. No. Wait, I got it in a second. My bad. This thing should be here somewhere. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, we have Muma up here. He just jumped, right? So, you would think, okay. And then he's also using the bubble, and he's sort of scouting where everyone is. But the scouting is already done, and we will see this in a second here. Clockwork's here. He's also scouting, right? Now, on top of this, so keep in mind, Muma is currently completely without cooldowns. Coolmat will boost up on here. And their tank line is located, come on, look there, here. right? Here's the back line, excuse me. The back line is here, in that little area with the stairs here, right? And the back room. And Coolmat will boost up here. And Fissure does the only logical thing in that situation is, look at this. He just goes to kill him. Why not? Right? Like, tanks just have used all their cooldowns. Now, Clockwork is off there on this little bridge I remember I showed you. And he now has to commit 1, 2, if not 3 blinks in order to get to their backline. Like, why is the backline moving out here? This is not making a Tracer player look favorable at all. The only thing he could realistically do is try to find someone in the backline and do something here. But it's too late. Like, he can't catch up there, right? I don't know what they were doing. Clockwork tries here. And what we will see is that now it doesn't matter anymore, right? Like, this is all, this fight you've lost. But look at Bishu's HP, right? So, Bishu will be demacked, as Flame's tweet said. And this will also happen on the second attack. He demacks him, gets out. It's all fine and dandy, right? Also, the damage difference here between Asher and Clockwork is not that great, so you can't really fault him for that. Yeah, it's substantial, but again, keep in mind, this guy was completely on the other side of the map, and his team was not synergized at all, right? So on the second attack, they sort of brawl this out, and they apply some pressure, and in general, Outlaw's default strategy is to have their Tracer player somewhere here. And that is true for both defense and offense. Clockwork will consistently be either here, here, but he will very rarely move outside that region. But that is 1, 2 blinks at the very least, if not 3. If he goes this way, 1, 2 blinks, right? And then if you're not just tank busting, so if a Tracer actually gets here, that's completely disjointed, right? Now, obviously, Asher also plays a sort of divey position with that team, but if you're dueling Traces, your blink management is highly important, and blinks, now that Sabiobi has sort of brought this to Tracer duels, blinks are damage. Blinks is blink on top of someone, knock him on the head, and without depleting your clip size, right? You get much more damage out of one clip's duration by simply doing that, and that's done consistently in duels. Now, if your team is positioned in a way, or doesn't coordinate with you, or doesn't tell you that they're open to an engage, then your blink management is completely screwed. You can't save one blink by going here, right? So this will inherently make you look bad as a Tracer player. Outlaws needs to coordinate this more, and it's also on Clockwork to like instill something in team's communication that makes him aware of this, or he needs to develop the like game sense in order to see these things happening, because this is not what can continue to happen, right? So this brawls out, and he will help kill Fissure. And just as a side point, by the way, for the guys that have seen Oversight, Wizard Hyung mentioned that Fissure sometimes does feed a little bit, and he, energetically moved his head when saying this. This does happen a little bit. I have to say, like, this happens quite some time with Fissure, but I don't think that's necessarily bad. Like, if he 80% of the time gets kills there, then it's probably worth it, right? Like, he needs to do that for LA Gladiators. Now, if he needs to do that always, and if he could assess the situation better, and if in fact other tanks do assess that situation better, is a different thing. But I'm not sure if I agree with that line of argument. Maybe another video. Let's see. So, Clockwork once again. Wait, he just used his pulse bomb here, and that is, let's find out again, on Bishu, right? So, typical setup for Tracer players within Houston Outlaws, right? Here, this tells you everything about what's Clockwork's position or like confidence level is on that team. So, situation. This is a Tracer, right? This is a 1 Tracer, 1, right? Here is Linkser, and he's chasing. And, like, Linkser has to hear and see and feel that damage from Tracer, from his Tracer, is coming onto this Tracer, right? Do you think he would trust him to finish him off and take that Tracer duel, even though he knows Asher is 1? No, he would rather, look at this, die to him than leave it to Clockwork. The confidence level in his play, and you can definitely trust Clockwork to do something like this, just, it's nothing malicious, right? But this is basically what they're used to. Like, they're not feeling confidence in their Tracer player, and for that, they're also not incorporating them in their play, in their communications, in their tactics, and it will always look like this. If you put the greatest Tracer on Houston Outlaws, let's make this point quick. If you put like a Sabiolbi and you mute him, you don't tell Outlaws that Sabiolbi is playing. You just sit him down on Clockwork's PC and have him play a match. Like, even after 5 matches, like, I don't think the confidence level is there. They wouldn't incorporate him, and as a result, even Sabiolbi would probably not look as great as he definitely does on the New York Excelsior, obviously. So this is a huge problem, right? You need to incorporate your Tracer, and especially in a meta where it's so much around the tank line and Tracer synergy, where we see it with Mano and Sabiolbi to an extent, but definitely Gesture and Profit, right? So here is one thing that I do criticize Clockwork for. So his team is long engaged in this fight, right? And we will see this. It's sort of unfair to completely base this on these couple of clips I'm about to show you. And it's sort of, if you want a lengthy discussion of this, I will put the 4-hour VOD review I did on Clockwork's performance of 4 different maps. He played this stage. And I'll put it up on his channel as well if you want a more elaborate opinion of why I think this is the distilled play, and this, especially this LAG game, is basically the essence of what the problem with Clockwork or with Traces for Houston is. If you want this more substantiated, look at the 4-hour clip. We're bullshitting some in there, but still, right? So, look at this. He's completely engaged, but just keep an eye on Clockwork's damage. Little bit of damage, no damage, no damage, no damage, no damage. A little bit of damage, a little bit. Linkser dies. And now he is on Shaz, right? Like this you will see this happen very often. That for the longest periods of time, while his teammates are already engaged in a battle, he will not be in the fight and will not find that window of opportunity where he could score important damage, which could completely flip the fight, right? So in terms of both pathing, to an extent, blink management, though that problem is definitely exacerbated by his team strategy and their default setups, and just awareness. It's just problematic. What Clockwork brings to the table. Now, though, I wonder what would be able to happen if they actually incorporated him more, right? So let's keep this going. And yeah, Clockwork actually gets Shaz here, right? So we'll also see this fight further develop. Clockwork sits on his pulse pump a little bit. And why he's doing that is because, obviously, his coaches keep telling him, frontline, 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 frontline. Bust him, bust him, bust him. Don't go backline, right? But when he finds out that, okay, probably the best course of action here is to stick that Zen Now, to be fair, also in that situation, they did just get EMP'd, so he can't right now. But like, he could have done it before, but that's not their macro strategy. Like, that's not what they want Clockwork to do. And if he, once he notices, then yes, like, Bishu is not going to be the immediate issue. I can trust myself to stick that pulp spawn onto Shaz, which will be just as impactful, if not more so. Then I should probably do that. Then he also delivers quite often. I think they should give him a little bit more freedom in what the macro strategy is. And Clockwork needs to find the tune of the game. So, as a little sneak peek, and I don't want to make this video too long, but Tracer is a dancer, and I will make content around this. Tracer dances to the beat of your team. Sometimes some Tracers will be the guy in the club going like, DJ, spin that, I want that song, play Rihanna. Like, that sort of guy, right? But usually, Tracer dances on the beat of the game. They flow on the rhythm that the game is having. And as perfect example, who recently found or was allowed to play to his own music in his head is Logix. Once you gave him the freedom to once again do what his game sense and his mechanics allow him to do, this guy started shining again. I don't know if that is in Clockwork. It's very hard to say before you see it. If he is able to ever tune into the sound of the game that his team, his band is producing. I am not sure, right? And that is as much as we can conclude at this point. Because if we keep the historical argument in mind, Clockwork has been playing with them for a long time, since FNRGFE days. How long is that? Like 8-9 months now? Something like that in that region. You would think that he would be more in tune. At the same time, to be fair to Clockwork, this guy only gets to play on 2 CP maps. And I would wager a guess that this also represents the scrim share he gets. So how is he supposed to develop that synergy and like get that feel for the game? Then the other guys that continuously are on the stage know how to like listen to sounds of things in their in the game, like have a lot of stage experience, have a lot of experience of how these other teams play. If you're not playing enough, you can't read the game as well as the top playset traders do. So I guess let me know where are you on this, right? So is Clockwork, has he proven to be too rigid and to not be in tune with the game? Can he not dance to what Outlaws is jamming? Or does he need to be incorporated in the band? Does he need to be given the triangle and just jam on that, right? He never will be. I wager that. He would never will be the star player of Outlaws, and that's completely fine. But he could be incorporated more into their playstyle. And while there would still be people dissing Clockwork for his playstyle and for his stats, he himself would know that he's doing the best he can on a specific role. And I think it's fair at this point, looking at his stage 2 as a whole, that he hasn't maximized that playstyle whatsoever. And he also wasn't put in a position where he could have. I hope that sort of clears it up. And thanks for watching. See you next time.